Boris Johnson, the discredited British Prime Minister of the past, says we should send troops to Ukraine. Meanwhile, Zelensky suggests that they can win the Ukraine war. Who's telling the truth?
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
You got it work. Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. That's exactly what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I call again for immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome on all. I'm Lembit Öpik. This is Lembit Öpik Live on Unprecedented TV, where we find the facts, kill the spin, and tell it like it is on stories from all around the world. We're ruthless with news, gracious with views. And hopefully you find that combination agreeable. You will get opinions here, but they're never dressed up as facts. And you will get facts here, but never dressed up in the form of lies. I want to talk to you about something which really matters, a reason perhaps why you may want to like and subscribe to Unprecedented TV on our YouTube channel. It's the difficult and apparently very vexatious question of what's happening in Ukraine. A question so vexatious that it seems to be progressively slipping off the mainstream media agenda. In other words, you're not hearing so much about it anymore. From time to time, our beleaguered and outgoing, I believe, Prime Minister Keir Starmer still goes to conferences which seem ever less important, as does his role on the international stage. But he still seems to claim that Zelensky can win. I think that's a preposterous concept. Maybe I'm wrong. We're going to talk to an expert about that in a minute. At the same time, it does seem that Boris Johnson, the ex-British Prime Minister who had to leave under a cloud, has waded back into the debate. He's suggesting that Britain says, wait for it, plans to, wait for it, send troops to Ukraine. That's right, you heard me correctly. Britain should send non-combatant soldiers into the theatre of war. Vladimir Putin's already said if anybody does that, they will be legitimate targets. Let me spell that out for you. If we send British troops to Ukraine, they'll probably get killed. The Ukrainians haven't been very good at protecting their own. The Russians have been very effective at finding targets. Their drone strikes are phenomenally intense. And while the Western media still sometimes moans about that, it's only because there are so many of them. How can British non-combatant troops survive in that theatre? Aside from that, we haven't got very many troops to begin with. We can't even defend the English Channel. So what is going on here? Can Ukraine win? And why is Boris Johnson causing fury in some quarters by beginning to pontificate on the mainstream media about sending troops into a war, which circumstantial evidence suggests he helped to promote? Well, joining me now is a military expert who's also a friend of Unprecedented TV. It's Warren Thornton. Warren, good to meet you. You're still in the Philippines, I understand.
I am, yes, getting ready for the end of 2027, ready for the fun on 2028 that nobody thinks going to happen but me.
The 2027, aren't you a year ahead?
This is the constant build-up between China and the barrier that is being put around it by the US forces and the constant build-up. So I'm reporting on that a lot at the moment.
So you're talking about a potential conflict in the Philippines?
Yes, we are, because obviously Philippines bases will be used for that. If, of course, they do decide to have a bit of a row with China. Philippines... and of course, they're shall we say, making a chain of islands from Japan to the Philippines right the way round. And if they decide that that's the way they want to go and do a naval blockade of China, that's exactly what's going to happen. So, of course, the tensions are rising all the time with more military hardware being moved out here.
Well, that's a bit of a shocker. It certainly will be a thriller in Manila if that occurs. Not sure I'll be coming over there to report on that myself. Will be depending on you, assuming there isn't a news and internet blackout. Let's talk about the situation in the United Kingdom. Boris Johnson, the some would say discredited former prime minister, as in he had to leave under a cloud on account of breaking his own COVID rules, and therefore, in my view at least, totally undermining all of those hectoring instructions we got to isolate. They weren't doing it themselves in Downing Street, but I digress. Boris Johnson has popped up on TV saying that Britain should send troops to the theatre of war, non-combatant troops, apparently. What do you make of this?
Yeah, he's talking absolute nonsense. Of course, Boris Johnson is being very, very stupid. The Russians have made it quite clear that if you put any troops in whatsoever, whether you call them peacekeeping, it's still NATO by the back door, and they will quite simply attack them the moment they arrive. So Boris Johnson may have a wish list. I wish I was handsome and dashing and only 20 years of age, but it's simply not so.
Well, he certainly isn't. Doesn't he look ludicrous? I think he thinks this is amusing to look like such a mess. I just have to say that the whole thing, it's worn thin now, I'm sorry to say. UK should send non-combatant troops to Ukraine now, former Prime Minister Johnson tells BBC. Now, quite a lot of people are quite furious that the BBC even gave this guy airtime. What does he mean, non-combatant troops?
What he's talking about is non-combatant troops is the nice way of saying peacekeepers. You have to remember that Boris Johnson carried the message for Joe Biden and also from Great Britain to Zelensky to say don't sign the peace deal at the 11th hour. That basically has seen almost 2 million Ukrainians die. So nobody is a big fan of Boris Johnson. This guy also, let's not forget, invited 3 gentlemen that Turkey were holding or meant to be holding till the end of the war because they were Azov battalion, which is the neo-nationalists, shall we say, is the nice way of putting it. And the Russians did not want them released. Now, Turkey released them. And, of course, Boris Johnson invited those very 3 same gentlemen to the Houses of Parliament.
Why?
Well, it was to promote that we should be backing Ukraine. And, of course, these guys were part of the Azov battalion, and Russia want them for war crimes in various parts of Russia.
So we got this man here, Boris Johnson, wading in again. He actually said it would flick a switch in Vladimir Putin's head. This is nonsense, isn't it?
It'll flick a switch in Vladimir Putin's head, actually. He's absolutely right, because Vladimir Putin has been very much the adult in the room so far. If Johnson sort of did that, it would flick a switch in his head, all right? It'll probably flick a switch to say, right, enough's enough, and we're going to hit these people. The British have already had people in there with intel and everything else, intelligence, and, of course, SAS people. There have been there have been British casualties. It's kept very quiet and everything else. But under the radar, there's been a few British troops there. And, of course, there's been lots of mercenary British troops there, which haven't fared too well.
So Britain's already lost soldiers. Has there been any evidence of official British deployments there?
No, none at all. But what they have done is, of course, they've turned up places like Lvov. They were the ones behind the crinky, idiotic dash across the river. They were also the ones who decided it was a good idea to go to Belgorod and into Kursk. And that didn't turn out too well. So apart from blowing up a couple of dams, Britain turning up and advising Ukraine hasn't turned out too well.
Are you saying that Britain was, or at least the West was responsible for blowing up those big dams? Large areas.
Yeah, absolutely. The dams, the one that fed the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, and a couple of others, and of course that was to deny various areas water and everything else. But Britain have got the technology to do that. They were certainly, without any question whatsoever, helping behind the blowing up of Nord Stream, along with the Americans. Anybody that thinks the Ukrainians did that with the yacht that they're saying, the Andromeda, the decompression chamber would be bigger than the actual yacht they were supposed to use.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson hasn't satisfied himself just with that. I'm not quite sure when he said it, but he did say it. Ex-UK Prime Minister calls on European allies to deploy troops to Ukraine. This is just the politics of the madhouse.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The reason he's called on Europe, because he's probably realised that the UK probably don't have more than 10,000 troops they could actually deploy sensibly, you know, fighting troops that would be ready to go. They wouldn't last very long in the Ukraine war that's going on at the moment. And the other thing we have to remember, Lembit, is we have more working horses in the British military than we do tanks.
Is that actually a fact?
It is actually a fact. We've got over 440 horses in the British military and nowhere near that amount of working tanks.
They must be getting on a bit.
Yeah, very much so. But let's put it this way, unless he's thinking about another charge of the Light Brigade, and although the first one was successful, it was a pretty daft military decision. That would be possibly something we might want to avoid.
I want to move on to other things after the break, but let's go back to that picture of Boris. Thank you, Boris Johnson. Why is he doing this? Is it just self-promotion?
It is one of these things where, of course, when this all settles down and everything goes away, Boris Johnson needs to sort out his reputation because, let's face it, he and Joe Biden are the two people that were responsible for the peace deal not being signed, told Ukraine to fight, and now there's over 2 million Ukrainian dead, over 700,000 injured. And of course, this is something that they put forward. So people will be, when all the dust settles, people are going to be doing the same things as they did with WMDs. They're going to be calling a former British Prime Minister a war criminal. And of course, the same thing was levelled at Blair when there was no WMDs. Boris Johnson stopped a peace deal being signed. And ultimately, since 2022, that has led to the death of literally, 2 million Ukrainians.
What a disgusting mess, really. After the break, I want to talk about other aspects of the situation, including the extraordinary claim, in my view, by some, that Vladimir Zelensky can beat Russia. Little Vladimir Zelensky, the professional clown, that's his trade, that's what he's done for much of his life, apparently can take on the might of the Russian army and Vladimir Putin, who I don't think ever performed as a professional clown, and beat him. Is that possible? Well, let's talk about that in a moment. Before that, I want to draw your attention to Tim Scott on Cancelled. He has been doing some cracking programs recently. He tends to look at the stories that aren't on the front pages. He buys the papers so that you don't have to. Well, that was clunky. There we go. Heads will roll for that, Warren. They can't get the staff these days. Maybe we should outsource it to a production company over there in Manila. Before the break, we were talking about Boris Johnson's extraordinary claims, but that's not the only extraordinary claim that's being made. Some people are still saying that Zelensky can triumph. He can actually win this war. I mean, it is one of the most ridiculous, in my view. Sorry, this is my opinion. You might have a different view. Most ridiculous. President Trump is wrong. Ukraine can win this war. An editorial. After peace negotiations broke down abruptly, Ukraine's European allies must go further and faster to provide the support America won't. Now, I can't remember which paper that was. I almost don't want to embarrass the paper. This is rubbish, isn't it?
It is, and of course they probably will have taken this from Rustem Umerov, who is the gentleman there, and he's the defense minister of Ukraine. And very, very simply, he has a very, very checkered past indeed, including corruption and exposing himself on the internet. The problem that we have here, is that there are lots and lots of people in Britain that are still thinking they can possibly win this war. To say that Ukraine can win this war is an absolute nonsense. Now, we said back in 2025 that Ukraine would reach a tipping point round about the end of summer in 2026. But that is fast approaching. And of course, once the roads firm up, once the winter weather goes away, and that we're not, basically the Russians don't have to slosh through Ukrainian mud, they're going to start moving, and they're going to start moving in several different directions at once. And the Ukrainians don't have enough men to stop them. This is why they desperately need a peace deal.
Yeah, actually, I've just been looking. That can I get that up again, please? That is actually in the Independent, 18th of February 2026. They put that on the top of the straight face. I just can't believe that you're still getting headlines like this. There is no scenario that I can see, whatever, in which Ukraine can possibly win. It's impossible.
Well, here's the problem that you have, Lembit. The rhetoric that is coming out, of course, is very much along the same lines as a certain gentleman in a bunker was coming out with 3 days before the Russians blew his front doors off. Now, the problem that you have, of course, is that the rhetoric that is coming out more and more is trying to raise money and everything else. But even if they give them the money, half of it's disappearing into other people's pockets. They're paying for weapons that can't be delivered for a good long while. Britain have given them almost every weapon they've got to give them. And of course, the rhetoric that they're going to keep coming out with is that Ukraine can win this war if we just give them a bit more money. Well, how's that gone for the last 4 years? And people will say, well, Russia haven't gone forward very much at all. Well, they don't need to. The Russians are still flying pell-mell into these bottlenecks and these cauldrons that the Russians are creating. They leave one road open, one road so that they can try and get in and out. And instead of wasting their troops assaulting, they just pick them off. And then, of course, they close that cauldron, and everybody inside is either, freezing to death, or they haven't got any food, or they haven't got any ammunition, and there's just nowhere left for them to go. So they end up either surrendering or literally trying to break out and getting killed on the way out. So the Russians are winning this hands down. And of course, you're going to see the attack on Slavyansk and Kramatorsk in the Donbass. You're going to see a move towards Zaporizhia. Sumy is under threat, Kupiansk. There are multiple places where the Russians can attack. And if you think, or Great Britain think, they are winning this war, the Ukraine are winning this war, I am going to ask you one very simple question, Lembit. We can all name towns and cities that Russia have taken from the Ukrainians. If you can think of any one city that the Ukrainians have captured from the Russians since 2023, I'll wait.
No, I don't think there is one. I don't even think they've launched a significantly useful offensive. They went into Kursk, total strategic nonsense, just to go into Russia and say we've got Russian territory, even though they said, oh, we're not going to stay. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Since you have mentioned this, though, I just want to play something. I've been asked to play something from a few years ago. I think it's 3 or 4 years ago, by Boris Johnson. Let's listen to this.
I think it's going to be easy. I think that the situation for the Ukrainians is grim. I think we've seen anything like it for 80 years in Europe, and what Putin is doing is unconscionable. But the sense in which Putin has already failed or lost, because I think that he had literally no idea that the Ukrainians were going to mount the resistance that they are, and he totally misunderstood what Ukraine is. And far from extinguishing Ukraine as a nation, he's solidifying it. He can't subjugate Ukraine. He can't win in that sense. That is a colossal thing that the Ukrainians have on their side. Against them, they have this brutal war machine. Our job is to do whatever we can to the tool to protect themselves.
And when you say Ukraine could win, Do you mean they could win on the battlefield, grind the Russians down, or win in the sense of make an occupation impossible?
It's probably the second more than. Look, I'm not a great military, but that is where we think that things could certainly go.
That's rubbish. I mean, everything he says there, they can't win the occupation because I think quite a lot of people in the occupied areas aren't that worried about it, and they certainly can't win on the battlefield. And yet now he's saying, Warren, oh, let's send troops in.
Yeah, they're literally desperate here. What you have to remember is he's saying, well, Putin can't win. Putin doesn't have to win. We're losing it all on our own. Let's face it, most of the countries in Europe are bankrupt. The coalition of the willing, include me out, I think, is probably the great phrase that was once used by Samuel Goldwyn. We've got Italy going, include me out. We've got various other countries saying, I'm not putting troops in. So it's the coalition of I'm willing up until the point until you ask me to put troops in there. And of course, they've had to club people in from like Japan and places like that to say that they would put troops into a peacekeeping force. So they can't even agree amongst themselves. Maloney absolutely can't detest Macron, and she's more friends with Merz than she is. Starmer, Macron and Zelensky get together, but Macron wants Great Britain to buy their weapons from France. I mean, the whole thing's a complete mess.
Yeah, but then, so, I mean, I just can't see how Boris Johnson, he was the prime minister when he said all that. And he's going on about Zelensky being able to win. The Ukrainians can win. It didn't even make any sense. Oh, they'll get occupied and then they'll make the occupation impossible. This isn't Afghanistan. He seems to be completely unaware that a very large proportion of the people in some of those areas, occupied areas, actually want to be part of Russia. If you had a proper referendum, they'd want to join Russia.
Lembit, you're absolutely right, because even up to Kiev, 65% of those people there are Russian speaking. And of course, as you get further and further east, that number increases. So whether or not he will definitely take the 9 oblasts, including Odessa, because they are mainly Russian speaking people. Now, whether he'll want to get into a Vietnam situation where, of course, he occupies the rest of Ukraine, and the West keep feeding these idiots into their to try and blow things up and fight this dirty war, as MI6 have said. When you start to fight a dirty war, when you start to carry out war crimes, when you start things like this, Lembit, you've already lost the war because, of course, the winners don't need to do this.
But not according to Zelensky himself. The what's it called? The political party, and we'll get up in a minute, in Germany. Zelensky has told them that, I think you even covered this on your show. Zelensky won't announce elections and war anniversary amid talks of US-driven timeline. So on the one side, he's now getting pressure to have elections because Trump thinks that they're overdue. And then on the other side, and we'll come to this, he's starting to tell the Germans he's going to win. Let's talk about this one first, though. Zelensky won't announce elections. Why not?
Well, he won't have elections because he knows he'll be ousted. And, of course, he's clinging on to power. And when he talks about the Germans, we're talking about the Christian Democrats with Merz, or we're talking about having a right go at Alice Weidel of the AfD and telling her, look, we're going to win this and everything else, when they don't believe it. Zelensky is dead man.
Zelensky tells AFP, I thought it was about AFP, AFD. It depends on
it's AfD.
Yeah. I think it's from a Ukrainian paper that Ukraine is not losing the war. This is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky told AFP on Friday that his country is not losing its war against Russia, has taken hundreds of square kilometers in a new counteroffensive, and that European troops should deploy right on the front line after any ceasefire. Now, I don't understand. Is AFP the AFD, or is that Associated Press or something?
That might be the Associated Free Press.
Okay.
But of course, he'll tell anybody that's willing to listen. He's told Merz, he's told Starmer, he's told America lie after lie after lie that everything's going swimmingly, and of course it's not. And he's facing all sorts of leadership challenges from other sides. There's Klitschko that's challenging him. A fair few people in the Ukrainian parliament. Zaluzhny very much wants to challenge him as well. So there are many. Poroshenko, the former president of Ukraine, who was an even bigger monster. These people are all lining up against Zelensky, and Budanov is only in there, who used to be the former, shall we say, chief officer of the SBU, which is like the Secret Service of Ukraine. He's only in with Zelensky, literally because he was put there by the Americans. The Americans didn't like Sersky at all and had him moved. Now, here's the other problem. Another woman who, shall we say, her grandfather has a very, very dodgy past, and she's spoken in glowing terms about Ukrainian neo-nationalists. It's Krista Freeland, who's now joined the Zelensky bandwagon as part of as looking after the money aspect of things. That's only going to end one way.
Meanwhile, I never understood if this is a spoof site or not. Zelensky's stupid strategy against Russia has no chance. I never understood if this is mocking him or if it's for real. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the fact is, a lot of people do feel that. I put that up. If viewers know if this is a spoof site or not, then let me know. It looks to me like that. I happen to agree with the idea. But then this one isn't a spoof. Zelensky loses it during Russian peace talks. I don't have time for this, and I won't say the word. The outburst comes amid the third round of direct negotiations organized by the US following earlier meetings in Abu Dhabi. He's got to have time for it. He has got no authority. He's got absolutely no capacity to get a deal on his own. Because as you said before, at least in my opinion and yours, he's losing. And the losers don't set the terms.
He is losing, and you're absolutely right. Losers don't set the terms, but America and Ukraine and Great Britain and everybody else seem to think that they can have some say in this. Winners get to make the terms. But here's the problem that we have. The Zelensky is saying, I don't have time for this. Well, he doesn't have time for it for the simple fact that the Russians don't want him in the room, the Americans don't want him in the room, and half the Ukrainians don't want him in the room.
It's like you're saying, I didn't want to come to your party anyway.
Yes, yeah. Even though I wasn't invited, I didn't want to go anyway.
Go on.
Yeah, go on. Then.
After you.
This isn't the first time he's got the cold shoulder, shall we say.
And yet he still has one little buddy. I think this next video is from a long time ago. There he is, Keir Starmer. I'll give you full support. With our efforts, you can turn this around. It's like, it's this embracing thing. You know, he hugs Zelensky. It just for some reason it's cringeworthy seeing a prime minister hugging this Ukrainian clown who has made a rather sudden career change into politics for whatever weird reason. But it doesn't look good on Starmer, does it? It actually looks awful.
No, it looks terrible. And of course, when you dig deeper into Starmer, you've got Starmer's connections with BlackRock, and of course BlackRock's connections with Ukraine and Zelensky. And then, of course, you've got the rather, shall we say, crazy story that's coming up about the 3 Ukrainian male models. The fact that he's given that he signed a deal to give Ukraine $5 billion over every year for the next 100 years. I mean, what's all that about?
Was it for 100 years? 5 billion. Yeah. It's a 100-year deal. It sounded really weird. 100-year pact with Ukraine. Why didn't we have a 100-year pact with Russia when we were getting on with them? 100-year pact with China. Well, we did. It was called Hong Kong. So that's ended now. It's just, this to me is massively negative PR. This video. This is from about a year ago, I think. But it's basically everything he does seems to be going wrong. There's only one way out of this, isn't there? And that's some kind of a peace deal which surrenders a considerable amount of land, which means the Ukrainians have lost countless troops. You put it at over 2 million. Yes. Hundreds of thousands or millions of troops just to lose land when they could have had a deal 4 years ago. And they could have kept them.
And they could have kept those lands. All that Russia were asking was that Luhansk and Donetsk became autonomous republics, not even part of Russia, that they were autonomous republics and able to govern themselves. And of course, they weren't going to have that. And Zelensky's still not having it. He's still saying he's not going to retreat out of the Donbass. There's going to come a time when Zelensky, he thinks he's still got all these good partners in Europe. There's going to come a time when the Americans go, enough's enough. Because America have other concerns. They've got Iran, and you and I disagree over China, but they've got Iran to take care of. They've got other things they'd like to do, like overthrow the Cuban government. They'd like to overthrow the Iranian government. So very, very much they're on a loser. I think I've said this before, but it's like, how can I put this? America have got a betting slip with a £50 win on a horse called Ukraine. And it's in last place and not doing very well at all. And they've just sold that betting slip to Europe.
Nicely put. That's very prosaic. You only think there's one way out of this, and that's a peace deal on Russia's terms.
Absolutely. Russia, if you give Russia the nine oblasts they want, if you give them Odessa, now that will leave Ukraine as a landlocked, tiny rump state. But it is their only way out of this, and Russia are going to take it anyway. You can carry on talking for as long as you like, Lembit, because while they're talking, Russia are just winning more.
And how bad is the fighting?
Very, very bad. If you would just remember that there are now drones in operation all over the battlefield. You are not only getting bombarded by the lunacy that is these weapons that we have nowadays. You've got drones all in the air. You can't possibly come out of cover. You're in trenches full of water. You are in some places minus 20 degrees. And of course, people are freezing to death. And to see some of to be straight with you for a minute, some of the videos we show on our channel, it's heartbreaking to see the death of so many people who didn't want to be part of this war. And when you are beating up 60-year-olds and throwing them onto the front line who don't want to go and fight in this war, you've already lost it, Lembit.
Yeah, and I have seen some gruesome coverage, which you boldly show. We don't tend to show it here on Unprecedented because it's so graphic and not particularly family friendly. But you do see these pictures, and it's just obvious. I guess this is from MOD Russia. I presume that's Ministry of Defense Russia, but
yes. So
it may be from one side, but you don't see victories on the Ukrainian side. As you said before, you just don't see them, and it's just extremely hard to understand why the West is still throwing billions into this. And I actually hear people like Starmer suggesting, oh well, everyone thought they'd have closed down a long time ago, they'd have lost a long time ago. They're losing every day. Yeah, they're losing lives, money, land every day. And
yeah, absolutely. What you said there is such a good point, Lembit, because this war was lost a long time ago. They are sacrificing Ukrainians just for a PR victory and to literally this Russia-phobic nonsense of, oh, Russia are going to invade Europe. No, they're not. They've got no interest in that whatsoever. What on earth would they want Europe for? The European Union has piled so much money into this war that almost every country is flat broke because they've given away their weapons. They now have to buy their energy from America at 4 or 5 times the price, and their weapons from America, which of course half of them don't work. Half of them don't turn up in the time frame that they're supposed to, and of course they're massively overpriced. I mean, it's a lose-lose. They wouldn't want anything to do with it.
That's the problem in all of those areas. As you're saying, we've just got failure essentially.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you a very simple question, and I ask you this every time: how long till this stops?
Okay, so we predicted this back in January of 2025. By the summer of 2026, Ukraine will be down, should things carry on as they go, to under 500,000 men. That means they'll be having to give up territory unless something else happens. They'll have to give up territory at a fairly rapid rate, and of course that will then begin to tell the Ukrainians will start to destroy everything. They'll try to delay everything by putting as many drones in the field as possible. But literally by September, you're going to see Ukraine be in a position where they're going to start to lose land at an incredible speed. And this, of course, will be a snowball effect. It's not going to happen overnight, but then suddenly, once the ball starts rolling, it's going to gather pace very quickly. If we are unlucky enough for Ukrainians still to be dying by the end of this year, Ukraine will be about half its size.
Thanks so much, Warren Thornton. Where can we get more of your shows?
Well, you can see us on Monday to Friday, Warren Thornton on Patreon. You can see us Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And, of course, on Sundays with the wonderful Lembit Öpik on Unprecedented, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Thank you so much. That is Warren Thornton here on Unprecedented TV. There are 3 observations. Number 1, I can't understand why anyone thinks Ukraine can win this. There are just degrees of losing now. It's obvious if you watch this objectively. Secondly, the fact that the killing fields of Ukraine continue to be a bloodbath only means that the continuation of the war, it can be measured in lost money, lost lives, and lost territory, all 3 on the Ukrainian side. The Russians are losing people too, and obviously it's costing them financially, but it's nothing like the effect it's having on Ukraine, and I suggest across Europe. And thirdly, Russia's not going to try and invade and conquer the European Union, in my opinion. This is a very specific war for very specific reasons, which anybody who studies a modicum of history and doesn't just follow hook, line, and sinker what the mainstream media says can find out. So you can rest easy. You're not going to wake up with Reds under your bed anytime soon, I think, in Western Europe. However, it's a grim and horrible situation in Ukraine. Everybody there knows someone who's died, and they're pushing 60-plus-year-olds onto the front line. If Boris Johnson had to go and fight, maybe he wouldn't be saying what he's saying. If Keir Starmer's children were being conscripted, maybe he'd think twice. But unfortunately, this seems to be a distant war in a country of which they know little. But one thing, in my opinion, is for sure. Until there's a peace deal, the killing will continue. And that peace deal will increasingly be on Russia's terms. I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik Live. Do let me know what you think. And please follow us, like us, and subscribe at Unprecedented TV on YouTube. Thanks very much for watching.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.